Okay, today I want to talk about why too much lactic acid training can lead to tightness, and it can lead to injury as well. And it's something that we do not talk about enough in athletics, track and field, and sport in general. We still have that comfort blanket of training. Now, the athletes are not the same as the rest of the population, where the rest of the population has to move more. Athletes have to learn to do, in a way, less. And I mean less in terms of, when I mean less lactic acid training. Okay, we need to actually pull back on athletes. Athletes need to have the reins pulled back on them more than actually the inspiration to get them to do more. Athletes are already doing more. We need to actually make sure that we can pull back the reins so we can actually allow the athlete to get better. The society still, in training, sporting society at the moment, we still see as lactic acid training, specifically in 400 meters. If you're a 400 meter runner, this will be relevant to you, but we consider those kind of training sessions as the foundation of 400 meter training. You need to get into that state. And you need to get into that state a lot to get any fitness, to get quicker. And you need to get in that state because that's training hard. And I'm not in agreement with that. I just think there needs to be, there's a danger of doing too much to it. And I think athletes, specifically even the professional athletes at the highest level, are still doing too much of it. Now, what are we talking about when lactic acid training? I'm talking about primarily, probably this goes more into the 400 meter training more than anything, because that's where we're looking at the 300s we're doing the 400, 300, 200s we're doing. Those kind of sessions where you're doing fast pace or relatively fast paced runs, and you've got a limited amount of recovery in between to get that build up of lactic acid, that heavy leggedness, that kind of feeling at the end of each rep where you're out of breath, you're looking for the nearest bin to throw up in, or the lactic acid has just come up, your pain in your hamstrings, your glutes, you can hardly walk. Those kind of training sessions. And we have to watch those training sessions because they're inhibiting. What we're doing when we do a lot of those training sessions is that we're not relaxed, because how can you be? It's uncomfortable. You're pushing the body to a limit. You're pushing the body to a limit that, if you do too much of it, you actually create the habit of tightness. When you push the body to the limit, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for you. So when you're uncomfortable, what do? You tighten up. And this is a problem, because you're actually in each training session, if you're doing too much lactic acid training, you're just teaching the body to shut down and tighten up. And when you've got competition, that very high pressure competition, you've trained the body to tighten up. What are you going to do in a competition? You are going to tighten up. And when you actually get lactic acid build up towards that last 100 meters of the 400, you're just going to tighten up because you've taught yourself to push yourself through it, to try harder through it, to try hard, the training hard mentality that infiltrates our performance at the moment. It's really bad. Training hard in the form of lactic acid training should be very, very limited. We need to understand as well, now I'm not saying we don't have that lactic acid training sessions every so often, but we need to put a cap on it. We need to put a cap on those training sessions and not do too much of them. Ideally, we need to understand that it takes a lot of recovery, even nowadays, and priority on recovery, to recover from a training session like that. Even when I was training as an athlete, 400 meter athlete, when I was younger, I'd be doing tough training sessions, 300s, a really fast pace. I'd be doing 500, 400, 300, 200, those kind of winter training sessions. And I never slept well after them, because particularly the stress levels were so high. You couldn't, with a training session nowadays, with that, you've got to focus on recovery. And what does that focus on recovery mean? It brings highly stressed state, which is what you are after a lactic acid training session. You're highly stressed. You've got to bring the stress down to relaxation. If you're not relaxed, you're not recovering. So it needs priority to bring that body down into a kind of, what's the word, homeostasis, as the scientific term is. The body when it's balanced and regular, and it's just at that perfect amount. But what do we have to do? We need to prioritize it. That means actually staying away from phones, and we need to concentrate on breathing after our training sessions. We need to learn to just keep away from those things that are going to keep those elevated stress levels. We need to allow that body to recover and low stress levels. That means that the day after is quite important. That means to focus on actually making sure that you're doing things that's promoting relaxation. You know, the tough training session, you can't just go and batter the body the next day. You can't do that. That's not going to work. So specifically when we're, as I say, we're on phones, which elevates stress levels. It elevates it, even in society today. So we have to watch that. So the actual recovery needed after these lactic acid training sessions is massively important. Even nowadays, we can't just go stop and then get on with our day afterwards. We need to prioritize and look at the things that are preventing those stress levels from dropping. And phones are a massive thing of that. Right now, we need to get to a point where we're sleeping, and we're sleeping to a point where we wake up the next day refreshed. That's of highest importance, especially as an athlete. You need to get up from a sleep and feel refreshed the next morning. That shows that you've had a decent sleep. And that's of highest priority as well. But nowadays, sport doesn't prioritize these little things. The people say, well, I've had 7 to 8 hours sleep, but if you feel rotten the next day, that's not recovery. That's not recovery. It doesn't matter if you've 7 to 8 hours and you've just slept all the way through. If you feel exhausted as you get up, that's not recovery, not today's standards. And that's not a decent sleep. So we need to get to a point where you actually get to, you're actually prioritizing sleep and getting to bed at the right time that's good for your body, or your kind of, what's the word? Your sleep cycle. And I've done I think I've done a video back in the day. I think I put it up in the card here, where I did talk about sleep and what the priorities and how to get better sleep. But this is really, really important. If you've got had a massive lactic acid training session, you need to have a decent sleep afterwards, and you need to bring the body back, the stress levels down to a relaxed state to have that decent sleep. That's the priority after that, if you're going to do that. As I say, I'm not saying lactic acid training is to be taken out completely. I think on the occasions we need to have that, but limited amount. When we're actually training as a 400-meter athlete, when we're actually training the movement, this is what we're doing. We're training a movement that we're doing, the movement of running, and the movement of running at certain speeds. And once you're training the movement of running, you're getting more efficient. The more you do it, you're getting more efficient. So I'm not saying do less training. I'm saying do less training at getting into the lactic and getting into those lactic acid training sessions. Now, you're saying, well, I can't train at high intensity. Yes, you can train at high intensity. If your training sessions are kind of focused and the priority is relaxation, you can create power. You can go at a high intensity once you have relaxation. The focus is on relaxation. You can pump your arms a lot, and at your powerful state if you're in a relaxed state first. Effort and relaxation, not the same thing. Once you have the foundation of relaxation, then you can apply effort on top of it. But you've got to have that priority of relaxation. And you need to get to that point where we're pushing the margins of the lactic threshold in that relaxed state. And that means not doing too much lactic acid training. You need to edge it forward. I believe in training is you need to do just the right amount of training that is going to edge your fitness up. Not to do loads and loads of training and to actually make sure we're covering every base, because that's over pushing the body. What you need to do have a sustained training program is to edge the fitness, do as much training as is necessary to edge that fitness forward and no more. Now, how do you find that it's what it's all about. It's what training is all about. It's you actually making mistakes to see that right balance. The first thing to do is making sure that you're at least having one day, ideally 2 rest days per week. That is, if you're an athlete, very, very important. You need to make sure that that recovery is instead, and I'm not saying sitting down for those rest days, I'm talking active recovery, walking around, movement exercises, but nothing that's going to fatigue the body. And really, we need to be, specifically in 400 meter training, we need to understand how lactic acid training sessions is actually building up stress levels. And actually, if you listen to Pavel Zatsulin, a very well respected strength coach and health and fitness guru, he talks about the fact that too much lactic acid training actually builds up toxic ammonia in the blood, which is toxic, and it actually destroys cells. So it actually can have a negative impact on the body as well. So we need to make sure that we understand how lactic acid, the amount of stress levels that comes up with lactic acid training, and the amount of recovery needed for them, and B, how much we need to do those lactic acid training sessions, because when we are doing those lactic acid training sessions to full and we're training hard, we are not relaxed. We are not. It's a general rule. If you're doing those lactic acid training sessions, you're outside your comfort zone and you are not relaxed. So we need to understand that. The best way to do is those lactic acid training sessions that are meant to be lactic acid build-up training sessions. You can still get that relaxation through the breathing exercises that I teach, the breathing exercises that you implement in between each set, between each run, that can prevent that lactic acid build-up. But you've got to make sure that the priority is relaxation instead of that lactic acid build-up. We can't have that priority. We need to make sure that the relaxation is the first foundation, the first priority in the training sessions, and make sure that you're just pushing the body to an adequate level so it can recover from it. It's hugely important. And maybe it's one of the first things. So when you actually get it, again, if you've got 300s in a training session, the very high is speed endurance session, that 300s, one of the actual mainstays of 400 meter training, making sure that you're using relaxation even in each rep. You'll feel fatigued, but relaxation is the priority. And you may run a little bit slower in each run, but that's okay. It's making sure that you're not finishing that session with too much lactic acid buildup. And that's really important. Make relaxation the priority of the training session, not training hard, not that lactic acid buildup, not that kind of feeling of nausea, not that feeling of the glutes and the hamstrings just seizing up with pain and you can't walk, as I felt before. You need to understand, if you're going to go up to that level, how much recovery is needed for it. You can't do that much the next day after it. You shouldn't do that much the next day after it. Should be active recovery if you're going to have a training session like that. And you need to make sure that you bring the relaxation down so you have a decent sleep after that training session. Massively decent sleep is actually feeling refreshed the next day. So I'm repeating myself, but I'm just emphasizing that. So hopefully that video gives you an understanding. It's actually a case that I talk about injury as well, and injury, psychological stress leads to injury. What are you doing when the body doesn't recover? You're still in a high elevated stress state. So we need to, if you're after a hard training session, lactic acid training session, if you're not dropping the stress levels, you're in an elevated stress levels to state. The phones add to that stress, so it keeps an elevated stress level. If you're in an elevated stress level, you're not recovering. That is overtraining. So if you're going to start and do another training session after that, you're going to lead to injury. And psychological stress, through research, has been shown to increase the amount of injury, and one paper said 5 times more chances of injury if you're psychologically stressed. So it's really important. Overtraining is rife in our sport today, even in the upper echelons of athletics and track and field and sport in general. And they don't understand, we still don't understand as coaches and athletes how debilitating those tough training sessions can be. And the fact is, we need to be able to understand the impact of phones on our stress levels to make sure that we get the recovery of it. That's all from me. I'm going to stop bleating on. Please like, please share, and please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so, because I tell you, you're not going to get this information from many other sources. We've got to change. I'm interested in improving and elevating sports performance, and generally in track and field performance up higher than it's ever been before. I want to do that. I think we at the moment have the capacity to do that because we're doing so many things to hamper our performance on the track. So please subscribe to this channel and I'll see you in the next video.